What would you like the power to do? Bank of America.
All right. This is Mike Duggan, in case you don't know him. Used to be our mayor, but you know, Mike, I've had the opportunity to talk to you a lot over the years. Some people don't remember this, but Mike Duggan was actually one of my bosses when I moved to town. He was on the chamber board, and when he was running the DMC and turned that organization around. This is the first time I've talked to you as an unemployed person.
Yeah, 4 weeks into unemployment and getting a chance to visit every corner of the state.
Well, we're going to talk about your campaign travels, definitely. But I just want to start out with being super clear. We all owe Mike Duggan a debt of gratitude that cannot be repaid. Thank you for your innovation as the mayor of this great city. Thank you for your creativity, your bold leadership. There's a reason why we are all in this place. There's a reason why downtown Detroit, the city of Detroit, and the region looks the way it does now. It's because of your leadership. Thank you.
Well, your chamber has been tremendously supportive, and I can't walk in here without marveling at what Dan Gilbert has done on this site. It's remarkable.
It really, I mean, the day it opened, it became iconic. So you're no longer the mayor of the city, but you're clearly not done with public service. Clearly you have a passion for jobs that pay less than market rate. I'm kind of concerned that you're not going to leave any money for Ed when you retire. So what is driving you to go from public service to public service?
You know, I think each of us in our own way tries to figure out what we contribute. And my question is the time, you have so much time left in your life, and I look and say, is the time I'm going to spend make a lasting impact or not? And I learned a lot watching Rick Snyder's time as governor. He could have done anything in the world. And whether you agreed with what he did or not, within a few years of leaving office, because the state keeps swinging back and forth, much of what he did got reversed. And I thought, the only thing that matters to me is, can I make a difference that lasts? And I walk into this building, and it's hard to describe the emotion. I was a kid in Detroit. I was on this site every Christmas going up to the 12th floor to see Santa Claus. Detroit was a magical place. And the reason that I ran for mayor was I felt like we could do something, but what I did was not just do something where they said, gee, when Mike was there, it ran well, and when he left, it ran badly again. That's just a waste of time. We built partnerships that said, here's the way the business community can work with the rest of the community to do the neighborhoods, to build affordable housing, to rebuild the riverfront. And I was so pleased to see Mary Sheffield run for mayor on the same way that I had done. No us versus them, black versus white, city versus suburban politics. She ran to say, let's build on the progress we made, let's include everybody, let's take it to more neighborhoods, and let's go farther. And you're going to see this next administration build on what I did. And then when I looked at Lansing, I looked at the same thing. There is no way in a partisan purple state where you split every 2 years, it goes back and forth, to make any kind of long-term change. And I thought, was there a path to make long-term change in this state? And is this something I could contribute that would be unique? And that's what I'm trying to do. But I feel like I've made a difference. I drove down here with my wife Christmas night. I mean, people in downtown Detroit in the winter with shopping bags in their hands. If you didn't grow up here, it's hard to explain how powerful that is, to see the window displays of Hudson's again, and people lined up to take pictures of the bear, and people ice skating downtown. You can make a permanent difference when you all pull together.
Well, I tell you, I mean, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I love Portland, but I tell my friends in Portland all the time that, you know, you'd much rather be in downtown Detroit than downtown Portland these days. I mean, it is so much a better experience here, thanks to the work that you and the business community and others have done. But let's dive into some of the issues that you are dealing with now as a candidate for governor, and will deal with when we get you into that gubernatorial suite in Lansing. As recently as the year 2000, Michigan had one of the highest per capita incomes in the country, top 20. We had top 20 status in terms of educational outcomes. Today, Michigan is in the bottom 10. Now, I've been here 15 years. I've frankly helped elect 2 governors, people who I call friends, Gretchen Whitmer and Rick Snyder. Doesn't seem to be a partisan issue that we've fallen so far, so fast. How are you approaching big challenges like per capita income and educational attainment?
See, I actually do think it's a partisan issue, but not in the way that people think. If you go back to Bill Milliken, every time the governor's seat has come open, it's swung from Republican to Democrat. Every 2 to 4 years, the House and Senate swing from Republican to Democrat. And so you're right, in 2000, we were in the top 20 in the country in K-12 education and achievement. Today, 60% of our third graders do not read at grade level. That's the state's own report. And that's not Detroit. 60% of third graders across the state of Michigan do not read at grade level. We have been dropping for 20 years. We're now near the bottom in the country. And you say, what is it about our children that they're not learning? But if you look at what has happened in Lansing, every 2 years, the Republicans and Democrats vote to change the curriculum, vote to change the textbooks, vote to change the measurements. And if you're a teacher in a classroom, what do? But you go back 12 or 14 years, and Lansing said every school in Michigan is going to be rated every year, A, B, C, D, F. And then the Democrats said, that's too mean. We're going to rate every school in Michigan green, yellow, red. I'm not making this up. That's the law. They changed it. Then Snyder said, no, that's too soft. Let's grade every school from top to bottom based on achievement. And then when the bottom schools really started to fail, he realized that was a mistake. 2021, Lansing comes in and says, let's reinstitute A, B, C, D, F. 2023, there's a Democratic trifecta. They cancel A, B, C, D, F. You want to know why we're declining for 20 straight years? It's because we're running U-turns every 2 years. And yet Mississippi, which I know, Sandy, you studied, where they went from 49th in America to 9th and 3rd grade reading in 10 years, you know what they did? They taught phonics. They put the kids in small class settings in 2nd and 3rd grade. They had tutors to back them up. They had a high quality curriculum. It didn't change from year to year. And none of that is Republican or Democrat. But all that's happened in Lansing with this even division is the parties see an issue as a chance to get the majority, not a chance to solve the problem. And so if you are a national company and you're thinking I can go to Indiana or Illinois or Ohio or Michigan, and every 2 to 4 years we change our economic development policies from MEGA to economic gardening to transformational brownfields to SOAR to let's cancel MEDC, why would you go to the state that has no stable long-term plan? I think that's what's hurting us, and I think there's only one path out of that.
So we do a lot of statewide polling. I think you're aware of that. And when we ask Michiganders across the state, how do they feel about education, public education in Michigan, we get a kind of interesting response. There's a vague understanding that, well, maybe we're not doing as well as we should, but I don't want any changes because my kid's school is fine. How do we create a sense of urgency with the voting population in this state for fundamental education reform that lasts?
You know, I'm in every corner of this state, and I would say this. I wouldn't say they'd say their school is fine, but you're right. They don't think things are as bad as they are. And I'm a great believer you face reality as it is. Now in Detroit, when the street lights were out and the parks were all closed and the cops didn't show up and you were in bankruptcy, you waited to the point where it hit you in the face. And I came in at that point to do a turnaround. What I'm doing in this state is saying, let's talk about what's going on at your school. Now, I go to school districts across the state. Nearly half the school districts in this state do not have a vocational training program, don't have a CTE program. The state of Michigan has been diverting the K-12 school aid fund. When we voted to take the sales tax from 4 cents to 6 cents in 1994, we were promised that was all going to K-12. The legislature, Republicans and Democrats, have been diverting it to other things, and this year took $1.3 billion out of the K-12 school aid fund and spread it into a bunch of things, including all the stuff they're fighting about in Lansing today. But what that's done is kill off vocational tech classes. And we have decided in this state that every 14-year-old ought to go to college, and we are going to offer you a college track. And yet, I can't go to an auto dealer in this state who doesn't say, I'm willing to pay people $100,000 to repair the cars, and I can't get people to do it. The cost of building this building went up because we are dramatically short of skilled trades. Healthcare workers are short in areas where we could be training. And people know this, and they're angry that in their schools, they know there are good career paths. Why are we not in every school in this state saying to freshmen, there are good opportunities to go to college and there are good opportunities in skilled trades and vocational training, and let's expose them to all of these things. People know their schools aren't offering that, and they want to change. So I'm finding this conversation when I say to folks, don't you think the money ought to go back in? Don't you think we ought to have small class sizes in second and third grade? Shouldn't we have quality CTE in every school? I'm not having any trouble getting people in the state saying you're right. Let's not wait till we've hit 50th in the country. Let's start to address it now.
Yay. Yeah, if we don't fix the education challenge in this state, if we don't fix the workforce challenges in this state, our businesses are going to leave because they're going to have to leave. As you said, there's just no way around solving the talent challenge for businesses without solving it at the governmental level.
What I say to people is, we are in hand-to-hand combat with other states for businesses every day. And as the AI economy is coming, some states are going to win and some states are going to get crushed. Now, if our schools are failing, what are we competing on? Weather? I mean, what do we have to say to people, right? We have always competed in quality schools, quality of our universities, quality of our workforce. It's always been a competitive advantage, but we need to address it now because, Sandy, you, like I am, I've been recruiting companies to come to Detroit every day for 12 years. It is a harder sell for Michigan than it should be.
So you mentioned data centers, you mentioned AI. There is a feeling amongst some of us that too many Michiganders have become a little too focused on either call it NIMBYism or kind of the cave philosophy, citizens against virtually everything. Data centers are a big deal. They're big news. What would be your approach to building things like critical infrastructure, including data centers, that will help fuel Michigan's economic growth?
Well, I'd approach it the same way I did in the city of Detroit. Now, if you go back to 2013, we had not had a new manufacturing plant come to Detroit in 20 years. And I sat with Mary Barra, I sat with Bill Ford, I sat with Sergio Marchioni at Stellantis, and I said, what do we have to do for you to look at Detroit first the next time you put in a new model and have a parts plant? And they said, look, we certainly need the land, we certainly need a fast permitting process, but the one thing we don't want is to get embarrassed at city council and be beaten up for bringing our company to your city. We have lots of other cities and lots of other states where we will be welcomed. And I sat with each of the 9 city council members and said, I think we can bring manufacturing back, but I want us to agree up front. Here's our standard. We're not going to give out huge checks to people up front. I don't believe in giving out $250 million checks to a company that hasn't come here. But I want to have a Detroit standard that says, as you build and hire, we will give you discounts on the new taxes you can pay. I got all 9 city council members to agree that's a great principle. So when we landed Bill Ford in the train station, we discounted the new taxes he was going to pay for the building that had been vacant for 40 years. When we brought the Jeep plant to Mack Avenue, we discounted the new taxes. And we got to the point where we now have $10 billion in investment in Detroit. Not that every city council member said yes on every deal, but people were treated professionally, respectfully, and every deal we announced got approved. I've been the last 3 years in Silicon Valley, and I'm saying to companies, Detroit's got to progress past the manufacturing economy. The next time you're going to cite a tech company outside of Silicon Valley or LA or Austin, Texas or Miami, what will it take for you to come to Michigan? And it's scary to listen to them. Michigan is not on their radar. And what they're saying is the amount of capital going to AI is almost mind-boggling. And all we know is that tech companies need this data to locate. We're going to go where we have the support. All we know about Michigan is it's chaos when you go to site a data center, and data centers need a huge amount of energy, and all we know is every time you guys have a storm, you have a bunch of blackouts. If that's our national image, we are going to wake up in 10 years and find out that all the job displacement of AI hit our state, but none of the upside benefit came. And so here's what I believe we need to do. People are against data centers because nobody is setting a standard for the state that says they're going to come in an orderly way and you're going to be protected. And when I'm governor, I'm going to say no data center gets considered unless you make 3 standards. 1, the data company, the developer has to pay 100% of the cost of the electrical bill. There is going to have to be huge electrical capacity built up. The people who live here have a very real concern that those costs are not passed on to them in higher electric rates. We need to have airtight contracts that the developer bears the risk. These are the wealthiest companies in the world. There is no reason they can't bear the full cost of the electrical bills. Second, it's got to be done in an environmentally sensitive way. The early data warehouses brought water in from the river and the lakes, cooled the computers, and these are basically buildings of huge computers, and put it back into the environment, raised the temperature, and jeopardized the water quality. We have to say in Michigan, that's not happening. That in Michigan, you are going to build closed loop systems where it's more expensive, but you've got to refrigerate the closed loop. We are not going to jeopardize our water and lake system in order to get the data centers. That can be done. And third, the local community has to approve it. You cannot run over them. If you set those standards, you can do like I did when Amazon proposed putting a 4 million square foot warehouse on the state fairgrounds. I sat in the backyards with the neighbors and I said, tell me what you want. Do you want this in your neighborhood? Here's what it's going to mean. And they said to me, well, we don't want to stare at the warehouse, so we want quality landscaping. We don't want the trucks coming down our streets, make them go on an 8 mile, but mostly we want parks in our neighborhood for our children. And I said, if we take the money Amazon pays us for the land and we build new parks in your neighborhood and deal with traffic and landscaping issues, will you support it? And when we went to city council and some of the anti-Amazon protesters showed up, the neighbors came in and said, we want this in our neighborhood. The way they're doing it is an asset. It got approved and 2,600 people are working there. As the governor, I'm going to be in these communities. There's 16 communities looking at these data centers, and there's all kinds of anxiety because people haven't engaged them in the process and shown them the benefit and guaranteed their protection. I'm going to set a standard for these data centers. It's going to protect the local communities, and I'm going to be with them shoulder to shoulder as they decide for themselves whether to host those centers in their community.
So, Mike, one of the among the many innovative things that you did as the mayor of this city was revitalize the neighborhoods through housing.
Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about, what you did to, turn fallow houses into inhabitable houses, and talk a little bit about some of the controversy associated with the land bank.
Well, the decade before I got elected, 200,000 people moved out of the city of Detroit. I go out to Grand Rapids and say, that's more than the population of your city. Imagine every man, woman, and child moving out of Grand Rapids in a decade and leaving behind all the buildings. That's what we were facing in the city of Detroit, 47,000 abandoned houses. And of course, my predecessor said, let's shrink the city. This is all negative. But I looked at this and I said this. There were a lot of burned out houses that had to be knocked down. There were a lot of beautiful brick houses that were vacant, not because the house was bad, but because people fled the neighborhood. And so what we did was come in and say, a lot of these vacant houses are an asset. And so I started a website, buildingdetroit.org, where we auction 3 vacant houses a day. You can still go on it. Mary Sheffield's still auctioning these houses. And we sold the houses. And it turns out, if you knock down the 2 burned out houses on the block, you can get people to buy and renovate the other houses. We've now had more than 15,000 families buy what was a vacant house, fix it up, and move in. The reason we led Michigan in population increase last year was where other people saw only blight, I saw opportunity. But we did knock down 30,000 vacant houses that had to go, and I left office with fewer than 900 abandoned houses left in the city. This is what you can do when you work together. So yeah, now the Democrats are attacking me again because of that process. And it's an interesting thing. Anytime anybody here who's in the development business knows, you've got some unscrupulous contractors out there who, if they can dispose of contaminated dirt in a cheap way, they'll do it instead of paying for a landfill. And all the time I was there, every time we had a unscrupulous trucker put dirt in a neighborhood, we caught him, we removed the dirt, put in clean dirt, and made the contractor pay for it. And we did it again my last month in office. So now if you haven't seen the Democrats, of course the Democrats, they really only have one unifying principle, which is attack their opponents. So now they're attacking me on this, and that'll be okay. But in the city of Detroit, I can promise you, every single time there was contaminated dirt, we've removed it, we've replaced it with clean dirt, and we made the developer pay for it. We're going to keep doing that. But if you don't want to make any mistakes, don't do anything.
So you mentioned Democrats attacking you, which I find incredibly humorous.
Yeah.
Here you are, up until very recently, a Democrat, a celebrated Democrat at that. But now you are being attacked by Democrats because you took off a jersey.
Yeah.
I mean, I find this just very shallow.
So there are a number of Democrats who are vote blue no matter who. I mean, that's just what they believe, and I respect that. They actually don't really look at who the candidate is. They just think the Republicans are so terrible, we got to vote blue no matter who. And the vote blue no matter who Democrats are mad at me. There's no question about it. The great majority of Democrats I found are actually thinking Democrats who want to analyze the candidates. And in 2022, for the first time in 40 years, the Democrats won the trifecta: Democratic governor, Democratic House, Democratic Senate. And as the mayor of Detroit, I was excited, all the things we hadn't been able to do. And I brought the Detroit legislators in. And I said, all the things we say we're for, now we can do them. Let's put money back in the K-12 school system. We keep saying we're for teachers in public schools. Let's put the money back in. Let's have an affordable housing pool. The state has never participated in affordable housing. Let's create a $500 million affordable housing pool for across the state, and let's pay for violence intervention, not just police. And they all said, yeah, right on. And I said, we're going to do this. And then I went up to Lansing, and for 2 years I watched what happened. And what I saw those 2 years is why I'm running as an independent. I went up there when we were saying, put the money back in the schools. And we had people saying in the Democratic caucus, well, I'm not going to put more money back into schools unless you pass my bill to guarantee that transgender athletes can play in girls' sports. And the leadership said, wait, those are two different issues. Let's take them up separately. And the moderate Democrats said, I can't vote for that bill. And you had people on the left saying, well, then I'm not voting for your bill. And they did nothing in 2 years to fix the reading levels. On affordable housing, we had a proposal to put $500 million in. Finally, the state could help build affordable housing, which isn't a problem just in Detroit, it's all over the state. And I was there when Democrats on the left said, I'm not voting for your affordable housing bill unless you pass my rent control bill for landlords across the state. And the moderate Democrats said, I can't vote for a rent control bill, I'll lose my election. And they didn't pass anything. And I couldn't believe it when we put up violence prevention money, what Democrats have said they wanted. And I sat in the caucus where they said, I'm not voting for your violence prevention money unless you take up my defund the police bill. And the moderate Democrats said, I can't vote for defund the police. And if you watch what happened that last year of lame duck, the House Democrats didn't meet for like 4 months at a time. They went home weeks early because the Democratic Party that I joined in the 1980s on behalf of working people and farmers and people who had a chance, that Democratic Party doesn't exist anymore. The Democratic Party is one big divided group that's been unified on only two things. They hate Republicans, they hate Donald Trump. Now I've broadened their platform, now they hate me too. But the reason they're always talking about the Republicans is because it's the only thing they can unify on. And I looked at this and said, I have no desire to be a governor who gets elected as a Democrat. It'd been a whole lot easier to run as a Democrat than as an independent, believe me. It would have been a whole lot easier to get elected, but when I get there, I'd have the same problem Gretchen Whitmer has today. All the Republicans line up against you because you tried to beat them in their House and Senate races. The left wing of the Democratic Party, who's not big fans of the governor, is going to be the same problem, and I'm not going to get anything done. I have no desire to waste 4 or 8 years of my life and not accomplish anything. And then I looked, and as you know, I'm a data-driven person. And I said, how can we do something that can break through this and make long-term change? And if you looked at the data was right in front of me. Gallup does a survey of Americans every year back to the 80s. Do you consider yourself a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent? This year's poll, 27% consider themselves Democrat, all-time low. 27% consider themselves Republican, all-time low. 45% consider themselves independent, all-time high. The answer is right there in the data, but nobody's seen an independent candidate before. And so I thought, if we're going to do something that's going to last my term, it means I need to hammer out partnerships with Republicans and Democrats of goodwill and have it last from year to year so every election is not the most important election in history.
So the Democratic politicians don't like you anymore because, well, you're not a Democrat. I assume the Republicans politicians don't like you because, well, you're not a Republican.
Right.
What are you finding as you're on the campaign trail, especially outside of Southeast Michigan? What's your experience talking to real voters in real cities that aren't concerned about what jersey you're wearing?
So in the last week, I'm just doing town halls everywhere. And it's interesting that Republican candidates right now go to their Republican club meetings in Muskegon, and the Democrats go to their Democratic club meetings in Ferndale. I do town halls where everybody's invited. I'm the only place where Republicans and Democrats are mixed together in the audience right now. And you should see the level of enjoyment, but I have been through, just in the last 8 days, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Traverse City, Fenton, Port Huron, Battle Creek, and we invite people. I'll go from a black church in the morning to a business group in the afternoon to an education group in the evening. And Sandy, you saw what just happened last week in northern Michigan. they have the Northern Michigan Policy Conference at the Grand Traverse Resort. It's Northern Michigan's equivalent of the Mackinac Policy Conference for the Chamber. 600 people, 3 days. They end up with a black tie gala. And in the course of this, they invited the candidates. And so the top 6 candidates for governor came up and did 15-minute speeches separately. They didn't want to be on the stage together, but they had me and they had Jocelyn Benson, they had John James and Nesbitt and Leonard and Cox talking to the people of Northern Michigan about what a vision for the state is. And I talked about the fact that I think Northern Michigan is a huge economic competitive advantage to the state of Michigan, that we ought to be selling the whole state together, that Northern Michigan shouldn't be forgotten. And if anybody knows about forgotten communities, talk to the mayor of Detroit. You had other candidates who had run statewide. They did a straw poll of the 600 people there at the end of it, which surprised everybody. And they voted overwhelmingly that the #1 person who can advocate for Northern Michigan is Mike Duggan, the mayor of Detroit. This is what I'm finding. And when I am up in Little Lexington and they say to me, we're in this town of 1,000 people and nobody remembers us, we've been forgotten, what do you know about it? And I say, let me see. What do I know about a community that's been forgotten and ignored? Let me take you down to Detroit, where I was elected by moms who had 2 kids in a neighborhood with no streetlights, no parks to play in, and the police didn't show up. I didn't make excuses. I went to work. Let's talk about your issues. And you should see they relaxed and they said, maybe we've got more in Detroit than we thought. And by the end of it, they're signing the volunteer cards. The one lady in Port Huron said, can I get your petitions right away? And I said, why do you want that? She says, I want to make sure you have enough so you don't have to run as a write-in. I said, okay, I like that. And so now we're starting to circulate our petitions, and it's really just a very enjoyable experience.
So what do you as a campaign person, let's face it, this is a political time, you're running for a political office. What are the dynamics for a Mike Duggan independent candidate for governor? What do you need to do? What does your campaign need to do to get to the win line?
So I said from the beginning, my goal is to win with 40% of the vote, pull 20% from the Republican side, 20% from the Democratic side, and govern from the middle. And when I kicked this off and I was at 15%, you had the pundits on there saying an independent has no chance. 15% is the ceiling, it's going to go down from here. And then you did a poll in May at the Mackinac Policy Conference. I was up to 21%. And I said, 21% is the ceiling. He can't go anywhere from there. And then in January, the Detroit News did a poll, and I'm at 26%. And they said, I'm the only one gaining in the state of Michigan. And now they're starting to get a little concerned. And I keep saying this, the Republicans and Democrats are so busy yelling at each other, they're missing the fact the ground is shifting under their feet. And so I'm saying to folks, look, in Detroit, 90% of Detroit voters vote straight ticket Democrat. I said, I'm not trying to end the Democratic Party, I'm trying to get them to work together. And so you can still vote straight ticket Democrat, and under Michigan law, you can also vote Mike Duggan independent, and the votes all count. You can vote straight ticket and vote Mike Duggan, fill in 2 circles instead of 1. Now I'm up in farming communities where they're saying, I'm going to vote straight ticket Republican and vote Mike Duggan. And as people are starting to understand how easy it is to both vote straight ticket and vote for me, you can feel the momentum coming. And so now we're getting to the point where people are showing up because they've heard about me and they're curious. And now they want to hear. And I'm just going to do what I did when I ran for mayor. I'm sitting in rooms every single night, 50, 75, 100 people at a time, farmhouses, small towns, saying, we have a lot more in common than we have in different. And wouldn't it be nice if you had a governor who got the parties to work together to solve our problems? And most people want that.
As we wrap up our time with Mike Duggan, I'll just share with the audience some of our polling results. And Mike Duggan has one of the most unusual polling profiles, certainly that I've seen, that our pollster, the Glenn Gariff Group, has seen. You're positive, you have a positive net favorability with every demographic group, every geographic group, every political group. No other candidate has that. The other thing is, and you alluded to it, that your name recognition outstate is skyrocketing. I mean, I think in the west side of the state now, you're approaching your name ID of 50%. And that was always supposed to be the big challenge for the mayor of Detroit, an independent candidate. But the way you're going now, your name ID is going to be as high, if not higher, than any of the other candidates.
But the legendary political pundit Tim Skubic, who does the show, said, I know Mike Duggan got elected mayor by doing the 250 house parties in Detroit. He says, but there's not enough time to hit every Kiwanis club and every agricultural club in this state. He'll never do it. The day he said that, I decided I was going to prove him wrong.
Try me.
And what's showing right now is, but you're right, the Republicans feel favorable to me 4-1. Democrats feel favorable to me 4-1. Independents feel favorable to me 6-1. And I'm finding that I can at least get folks to come out and listen. And at the end of the day, if you're a vote blue no matter who person, I say, God bless you, that's how you feel. But I can tell you the way things are going in this state, people of Michigan want change.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next governor of the great state of Michigan, Mike Duggan.
Thank you, Gene.